Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. We get lots of letters now that, especially at the moment while our comments are disabled, we do get a lot of email, because our email is at the end of our videos, so you can always get in touch that way, and you can always get in touch with me anyway on Messenger. But occasionally I get one that is a very touching letter. This is short, it won't take long, but I'll just read to you without any names. Now I should tell you that for myself, when my marriage went down in the UK, and I pretty well lost almost everything. I've lost that a few times in my life, and there's always hope, and there's always, as long as you have faith, it doesn't matter. Faith is not a religious term, okay? That for me, faith is just the belief that things will change, and knowing that they will, and knowing that there is some kind of good force, if we should try to keep it so we're non-religious, that there is a force for good which will cause the pendulum to return and swing back to being good. And I left and I went to America, and by arrangement with my soon-to-be ex, the two, we agreed. Well, the boy that I took with me, Luke, wanted to come with me, didn't want to stay in the UK, and that was the way that it was. And so, with everybody's agreement, he came out there. And I was a single parent for many years, and it was tough. In fact, I was a single parent until I went to live in Florida, which was from 1999 to something like 2001 or 2. I went to live in Florida. So this letter, this man, the author of this letter, knows that was part of my life. So he says, "I don't quite know how you did the raising of your child all alone in USA with no interaction with his mom. My case is different, and I never got the chance, as she abducted our boy to a foreign country and shut me out." He tells me what the general country is, but I don't want to give details out. Anyway, she shut me out. "I would like to have done what you did. I am slowly dying of broken soul. Kind regards." It's a situation which I am well familiar with, because when my first marriage went down the tubes, I lost all 3 of my children to them going to another country, and somehow I know that it works for some people, but I didn't see them for something like 4 years. The bond was never quite reconnected, and so it still is that way. The pain of that is beyond description, even though the apparency is when a man walks away from a marriage, the apparency is that it doesn't affect him, but in fact I believe that irrespective of what the outside appearances are, it really does affect him. And like this man has said, they often, men who are separated from a family are in a way dying of a broken soul. How to get over this is another thing. And I think that the realization that sometimes people who are blood related are not always your true relations. I know that sounds that sounds a little strange, but I've spoken to many parents who were just, as soon as the child was grown up, they left, and pretty well that was it, unless they were needed for help. Now, I did come out to America with the help of my 3 children, and for a while it went quite well. And then maybe it was a case of cultural differences again, but I was going through a difficult time trying to raise one child. We had help at the beginning, which I have to face it and give credit, I would never have been able to make it anyway, or certainly not as easily. And so I got help at the beginning, but then I don't know, the bond had been broken, and it never came back. It came back until the first crisis, and then when it was a crisis, it never repaired. Now, when I say a crisis, I mean something happened which caused a great deal of upset, and it just seemed to be permanent. Now, I see the difference with Beth. Beth can have an upset with one of her siblings, but at the end of it, they're still her siblings. And so it never has a feeling of permanence. As she said, after a few days, it's like, well, okay, but they're still my brother, sister, and it repairs. For me, it didn't, and I've spoken to so many men in the cases, and women, men more often than women, and they have concurred with me that sometimes when someone may be a blood relative. Sorry, another little disturbance. The dogs, once they start everybody off. But anyway, the point I was trying to make was that sometimes our blood relatives are not always what I think of as our cosmic, for the want of a better word, our cosmic family. Those we all have people who we've met and immediately feel an extraordinary connection with. We all have that, and those people remain good friends for the rest of our lives, even though we don't see them often. They're just there, and when you call them up or they call you up, within a second it is as if you were never apart, even though it may be years since you had spoken to them. So one of the challenges of being separated, as this man indicates he is from his son, is that you have to understand that this may need to be, it may be meant to be, and you have to move on. You have to put that part of you which is broken-hearted, that little place in your heart that is injured, and you have to put it to one side. You know, Filipinos are experts at this. Filipinos are expert at this because in as far as I can see, in no other world, in no other country in the world, do families stay apart. A Filipina, there are millions of Filipinas and Filipinos who are living apart from their families in order to support those families, and they're living apart thousands of miles from each other, and they have to maintain a family connection. My brother-in-law, Tata, is in, I think, Kuwait, and he probably won't be home for another 2 years, and yet he will maintain his family connection. He is still Tata, he is still Tatai, which is father, and he's still married, and they somehow come to terms with this of living apart. Not something that I would easily be able to do. That wouldn't be okay for me, but they manage it and they cope. So take a leaf out of the Filipino culture. To my friend who I read his letter, and you might learn to move on. So maybe it's time you came out here, in case you haven't already been out here, and get a few lessons from someone who, not me, but from someone who has learned to be separate and yet not be broken. Thanks for looking in. This is A Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.